Discipline. A most important trait to possess if you're going to make it on this cold rock as an artist. My peasants, allow me to serenade you with some more juicy drawing techniques that will no doubt make you superior to all the other morons that populate this frigid plane of existence. I will forge you into weapons of merciless intellect and creativity, but first, we must hone our drawing skills, for this is the secret to being a superior artist, and by extension, a superior person, in contrast to all the other idiots out there. So without further ado, allow me to continue what I started in my previous explosive video on how to start a freaking blocking of the human figure and show you how to develop the drawing from a simple blocking state to a more precise representation of the human form. Here's a sped up view of the refinement process just to give you a simple overview. As with my last video, I will also release the raw footage in 4K just in case you want to see the entire process. I only used an HB pencil in this video because the lead is hard enough to produce consistently thin lines without having to constantly sharpen the pencil, but soft enough that the lines are dark and easily erasable, which is important in this developmental stage. Once the figure is blocked in, don't just say, okay, now I can start refining and shading. No. Go over your lines and continue to correct and refine the drawing in this simple stage. Down the road, you will be able to compress these stages and explode the drawing onto the paper. But until then, it is best practice to be thorough in each stage of your work. After we are sure the drawing is correct, it is time to break down the straight lines into more accurate and curved forms using straight lines, at which point you might ask yourself, but Louis, how do we use straight lines to make the figure curvy? My dear peasants, I will now give you one of my many robust morsels of greatness to suckle upon to your heart's content. You can indeed draw a circle with straight lines. Start with a square and systematically chop each corner off and continue this process until you have formed a circle. Fine, we can draw a circle with straight lines, but why would we want to do that? As I explained in my previous video, drawing with straight lines forces us to understand the direction of an angle along with its starting and stopping points. Drawing a curve is more like guessing the curve, but when you draw with a straight line, you need to actively observe the subtle lines and breaking points that form the figure. In this manner, you get more of an exercise in thing angles. Another advantage is that when done right, you will have more crisp lines and points to judge proportions with. As you can tell with the legs, I have been drawing in the more subtle lines over the basic lines I already drew. I start from the base of the hip and continue to the knee. I am actively observing the subtle angles and the breaking points by forcing myself to draw with these straight lines. I constantly check the other side of the leg to make sure it's not disconnected. In this manner, I'm drawing the entire leg and not just a piece of it. These are the points and relationships I look for when drawing the legs. Take a moment to study this diagram and understand that all of these points must relate to each other. Using the negative space in between the legs is a very good way of measuring the relationships of points and double checking the position of the legs. My simpletons, I know this can be difficult, but I can assure you that you are in capable hands, for on this channel, you will find a very high degree of knowledge that I will use to rocket your ass to levels of greatness you never even dreamed of achieving. You can count on me to always be civil and bring a strong sense of maturity to the table. I do this because I'm a better person than you are, and I wish for you to share in my superiority. So be at peace as I steep your ass into the boundless well of genius that are my impervious teachings. I treat the arms the same as the legs, with the understanding that if this was a live model, I would have to pay attention to potential movement, since the arms are probably the most likely to move in a position like this. If I need to correct the length of the arms, or if I notice the basic blocking is not correct, I can still easily make these corrections at this stage. Just make sure that when you draw, you keep the lines firm but light enough so you can erase them. You don't want to scar the paper by drawing with a heavy hand. This is why I recommend drawing with an HB pencil at this stage. As you can tell, I am working all around the body. I'm not overdeveloping any one part. There is a reason for this, my precious buttholes. Every time you develop an area in drawing, it will affect how your eye sees the rest of the drawing. Therefore, you don't want to develop an area to the point where it cannot change and then realize that it needs to shift because developing another area reveals some proportional issues with it. Instead, keep it light and precise and build the entire drawing up at once. Do this by moving around the drawing. This will also assist you in seeing the entire figure, which, as I said, is one of the most important abilities you can put your talent points into. So does working at this more subtle stage mean we don't need to worry about the proportions? No! Though we are working with smaller lines, we should still be focusing on the entire shape of the body. This is actually one of the greatest keys to drawing. It is being able to keep an eye on everything as you draw the small details. Once the more subtle lines describing the character's form are in place, I lightly and evenly put a base shadow shape in. Refrain from darkening and refining at this stage because you'll notice that once you put these light shadow shapes in, your drawing might need to change. Essentially, every bit of information we add to the drawing will assist us in seeing the proportions. So adding these shadow shapes in will help us see the lengths and widths of the anatomy we drew. Once you have the shadow shapes blocked in, I recommend spending at least 30 minutes to an hour in correcting the drawing while keeping it at this stage and without refining it further. Think of this drawing as a battle arena to train your mind in the art of angles and proportions. Now guys, I'm currently live streaming every Tuesday and Thursday, and I'm also starting drawing workshops, which will be held the first week of every month. All skill levels are welcome. Link in the description below. These tools are not to be taken lightly, for they have saved my life more than once when I have found myself in the middle of a vicious pencil drawing cockfight. It is no surprise that I always came out on top, not only because I'm a better artist, but also because I'm a better person than you are. So until next time, I am Guidetti.